book besties, welcome back to the channel. My name is Cayenne and this is Cayenne is Booked, and today we're talking about all the books I read in November 2023. So I read a total of 19 books last month, and I mean, I'm pretty proud of that number given the fact that like it's the holidays. I'm a teacher and I'm fighting for my life. I had food poisoning somewhere in there, and there's one other thing that happened I just don't remember. But anyways, I think 19 books is great, especially for somebody who like works a full-time job. So, normally I would do a top 5, but all the top 5 books from this month are going to be featured in later reading vlogs. So I'm just going to talk about each book, tell you what I rated it, and kind of just go from there. I pretty much only had 4 and 5 stars. I am going to admit right now that I haven't finished Iron Flame. So yeah, let's just start off with that one. I'm 89% of the way into Iron Flame. And the problem is I started reading it when everybody else was reading it. And then I got to the point where like I was seeing such mixed reviews and like such feelings about the book that I got to the point where like I was almost too scared to keep reading. And I've been at 89% since I started reading it on November 11th. So I got to 89% on like the 13th. And I've just been hanging out there. Like I cannot, like I'm pretty positive, oh my gosh. I'm pretty positive I know what happens, but I just cannot like bring myself to read like the last 11% of the book. So I am carrying that over into December. Will I finish it before the end of 2023? I guess you have to come back to see my December wrap up. I'm not hating it, but I'm not feeling the same like obsession that I felt when I was reading Fourth Wing. So that really makes me sad. But I really try to remind myself that like when you follow a couple and you follow a couple of cross books, sometimes those books like feel like filler books or like are books that don't always hit until you have the complete series. So I'm trying to keep that in mind. However, I don't have the complete series right now. So right now I'm just upset. Right now, I know something's going to go bad for Xaden, and I just can't bring myself to finish it. So I'm carrying that into next month. I'm also carrying my Throne of Glass, like read and annotate. I'm like 3 or 4 chapters into that. I did start it. Maybe over winter break, I'll be able to actually finish it. So we'll see there. So I am carrying those 2 books over. And Throne of Glass the first time around was a 4-star read for me because it's just the beginning of a series and those are always just difficult. Especially for a fantasy series, like sometimes they are really, really great. And then other times I'm like, I just really wanted more, but like obviously you get them more later in the series. So I do have those 2 that I'm carrying over. But basically like it's just straight 4 and 5 stars for me. There's a few books that I stopped and/or we'll probably come back to later. Like I still have a hockey romance hanging out there. I still have a couple of other books. So will we finish those books all before 2023 ends? Probably not. But let's get into like what I actually read in November. So coming in hot first is Fatal Identity. So this is book 10 in the Fatal series by Marie Force. If you watched my wrap up last month, which I will link it right up here, then you know that I got all the way through book 9 last month. And then my plan was this month is to like finish that series and then start the next one that follows this couple. So we're talking about Sam and Nick. He is the vice president currently. She's still a homicide detective. She is the second first lady. And everybody expected that like once he moved up the political chain that she was going to give her job up. And she's like very adamant, like, I don't want Secret Service. I don't want any of this. Like, I just want to go and I want to continue to do my job. And then when I'm in the position to support my husband, like I'll do what I need to do to support him. So I really like that aspect of it because obviously we've never had an instance where First Lady has kept her job. And I like the idea of it, and that's probably why I love Sam so much. Like she's a baddie and she doesn't take anything from anybody, and she's still keeping her job even though like really she doesn't have to work. So this one is, and obviously she's a homicide detective, so there's always like a murder to solve. So in this one we have somebody who is the son of the FBI director, and he comes to Sam. Obviously, she's very high profile. And he comes to Sam and goes, hey, I think there's something wrong here. Like, I think I was actually kidnapped like 30 years ago. I don't think that my dad, who's the head of the FBI, is actually my dad. Like, can you investigate this? And as you can imagine, things get super sticky. Things like, you know, secrets start coming out of the woodwork. Twists and turns happen. And I really liked this one. I'm not going to go too far past that because I obviously don't want to spoil anything in wrap-ups. And I can't remember if this is a spoiler or not. So, Fatal Identity, I did give that 5 stars. That was the first book I read in November. And you're going to see a theme here very quickly. Second book I read in November was Fatal Threat, which is book 11 in the Fatal series. And if you see me looking over, I've got my notes up on the screen because there was no way that I was going to be able to keep all of these separated. I mean, no way. So this one is a body surfaces like offshore in a river. She goes to investigate. The Secret Service comes, takes her to an undisclosed location, her and her entire family, to an undisclosed location because there is a threat against her and the family. And Nick is overseas and he says, yeah, like pull him. So she spends like a period of time thinking that Nick's dead. And she's being pulled to like go to safety until they can figure out like the threat level. So come to find out he's still alive. She's furious that she's being sidelined in this investigation. And they're basically looking for a killer that's out for vengeance against one of the two of them. And for Nick, it's because he was not an elected vice president. So the vice president that he replaced was like terminally ill. So he stepped down. Nick was pushed into a spot. So a lot of people feel some type of way about an unelected vice president being in office. Because obviously we all know that like if something happens to the president, then the vice president is going to take over and the American people should elect that person, right? I'm not doing this meaning I don't believe that. I'm doing that because that's how the person who is like basically running after Sam and her family feels. Now, you know that I read a lot of romantic suspense, and for me, it always comes down to the crime on how I feel about the overall book, right? Like the couple can sway me, but usually it's whether or not like I think that the murder or the crime is interesting. And this one, solid 5 stars for me because it was so good. I was in suspense. Like there were so many different suspects that when we finally figure out who it was, I was like, oh, like, you know, when you do like that's kind of how I felt. So I really enjoyed this one. Like I said, this is Fatal Threat, book 11. Next one I read was Fatal Chaos, which is book 12 in the Fatal series. They go and like she plans like a secret vacation for them because obviously as vice president, like his schedule is like even more hectic. So they go and she plans this like secret vacation with the help of like the Secret Service. So they do all of that. Then they come back and Belle always has to like let you guys know that she's in the background. Anyway, so they come back and there are drive-by shootings that are happening in Washington, D.C. But the problem is like there's not a specific profile on the people that they're killing. They're literally just in the car driving and then like they just shoot somebody and drive. Like one's a 7-year-old girl, another one's like a 56-year-old woman, another one's like a 30-something lady who's like pregnant. There's no rhyme, there's no reason. And it really takes like a lot of drilling down and a lot of like grunt work to figure out who is pulling the trigger. And then when you find out who's pulling the trigger, you realize like they're just a puppet man because there's leverage on this person. And then Sam like gets to the bottom of it. So you guys already know how I'm gonna rate it because what an interesting concept, especially since like this person has to be an expert marksman. So I rated this one 5 stars. Next up is Fatal Invasion, which is book 13 in the series. Then, so like there's a brutal home invasion and an entire family is killed minus two 5-year-old twins. I was trying to remember how old they were, and I knew it was in the synopsis, so I was reading it real quick. Two 5-year-old twins. So they are a family that's in hiding because what happened? The dad and the business partner have like a really bad situation. Business partner starts, Ponzi scheme happens. The business partner runs a Ponzi scheme. It blows up into this big situation. The other business partner didn't know, they go into hiding, right? So then the assumption is like the business partners found them. So Sam, and you learn this like first book of the series, Sam has not been able to carry to term with any of her own children. So I will tell you that like if you have fertility issues, know somebody like that's a trigger for you, be very careful when you read these books. I think the author does a really, really good job of being very delicate with the situation that is not easy to be delicate with. However, like it's still there, it's still prevalent. It is still something that she thinks a lot about, especially now that she found Nick and like wants to give him a family. So they adopted Scotty, and I talked about that in last month's books because they adopted him in like the first half of the series. So then Sam sees these two traumatized little kids, just lost their whole family. Their eldest brother is away at college. They're asking for their mom and dad, and she's like, I'm gonna take them home and take care of them. And you can probably guess where that goes, but I'm not gonna spoil anything. I mean, I might, because I think the next book in the series. So she's investigating the murder. We all know that she finds out who does it, and it actually doesn't turn out being who you think it is, and it doesn't turn out being for why you think it happens, because like all signs point to the business partner. All signs point to like them finally being found out because they didn't enter like witness protection. So all signs point to this one person, and then it is a very interesting like little spiral of how we end up to the crime that is actually the crime that happens. So that's Fatal Invasion. It was so good. Like now that I am like sitting here and talking about it, I really like was just very, I just love the series, like as you can tell. But I thought it was like very well done for the situation that they were dealing with. Next up is Fatal Reckoning, which is book 14 in the Fatal series. And so Sam's father is I believe he's a quadriplegic, so he only has like a little bit of movement in like the left side of his body. He was shot in the line of duty like 3 months before he was supposed to retire. He was also a police officer. And so he's been living like basically on borrowed time for about 4 years now. And Sam gets a call from her stepmother. They live right next to each other. And so she goes like barreling over to the house. And her dad has a DNR because he doesn't want to live life like in any worse conditions than he was already living them in. So he said like if it gets to a certain point, like I don't want to be like resuscitated. And yeah, that's what it is. I was like, oh my gosh, am I even saying that correctly? Anyway, so Sam has to make the decision not to resuscitate her own father. I'm going to tell you right now, book 14, like I just like sobbed my way through it because it's a passing of her father, and her father were so close. I mean, probably about as close as my dad and I are. And so like I really saw a lot of the dynamic in their relationship. It's like the dynamic that I have with my dad. And so I just remember like crying, and like they how they have full funeral service. Her stepmother's mad at her for making the decision. All this is happening, right? And because he was shot in the line of duty, it immediately takes us to a murder or a homicide, essentially. And it's been cold for years. And there's a tip that comes in. And the killer is actually somebody, is actually a police officer. And Sam runs this person down. I mean, runs this person down, because there's nothing that she wouldn't do for her dad. But she does have to be like very careful, because obviously when it goes to trial, like her lieutenant Gonzo has to really take a lot of the lead in this situation, because like when it goes to court, they have to be able to have a solid case. And the only way to have a solid case is if she's not the lieutenant in charge, because it's her dad. So that's that one. Obviously, like for me, this one was a 5-star as well because it was gut-wrenching. It's her dad. It's them finally being able to solve the murder. And it's like really, it's a bittersweet moment because I can't remember the exact quote, but I know she says to Nick that she's kind of happy that her dad didn't live to find out who shot him. And I'll leave you with that. So that is Fatal Reckoning. I'm like kind of tearing up just thinking about what I read. Okay, so Fatal Accusation. This is book 15. So she's attending a party with her husband. President Nelson is accused of having an affair. Here we go, right? There's a lot of tension about whether or not Nick is gonna have to take over because the affair happened while the First Lady was undergoing secret cancer treatment. So this guy's not looking, he's not looked upon very favorably right now. Let's just put it like that. So it just becomes about this like public like media storm essentially. And within that, there is scandal in the department because of her father's shooting leads to a lot of questions, and those questions lead to other police officers who were not doing what they were supposed to be doing, who were part of the problem, who helped hide and commit other murders. So they are under like a lot of scrutiny right now, but also, what do you call it? Oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. No, don't do this. Oh yeah, so there's just like, there's a lot of scrutiny around the department right now. So she's in the thick of trying to help solve all of that while trying to figure out if she's gonna end up living at, what is it, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I'm gonna tell y'all right now, I couldn't even imagine being in the position of potentially having to deal with that. All right, so Fatal Fraud. This is the Fatal series. This is book 16. So this is the 16th book that we followed Nick and Sam together. I just want to asterisk this before I launch into this. Like, there's going to be a small spoiler, but like the series that they move into, it already kind of spoils it for you. Like, it's not a secret. And also too, like, I just want to be very like clear. Like, I haven't talked a whole lot. I've been really focused on like the murders that are happening. But I love Sam and Nick's relationship. I absolutely adore their relationship. It is one of my favorite like long-term relationships that I've ever read. And it's very reminiscent of the In Death series by J.D. Robb, which follows Eve and Rorik. I really just like watching couples, not every couple because you have to have a specific couple, but I like watching the ebb and flowing of a relationship. And I think it works really well when you talk about like following a police officer because you can kind of like lean back because Eve in the In Death series is a homicide detective as well. So my friend actually Books by Mary on Instagram is the one who suggested this to me because I am a huge supporter of the In Death series by J.D. Robb. So with all that being said, this is book 16. This is the last book in the Fatal series. So, there's a prominent member of the DC community that's been murdered. So obviously Sam is back into, what do you call it? Back into the thick of like solving another high profile murder. And, it's, you know, like somebody who isn't looked very favorably upon by other people because of some drama that she was involved in. Her husband's facing a lot of scrutiny right now because everybody wants to know if he is going to run for re-election. And so he comes out and he goes, and I don't think this is really like spoiling it. I don't know. Kind of. No. So he has to declare his intention. It's the first holiday season without her dad. Like, there's a lot of things happening. There's a huge situation that happens like at the very end of the book that leaves us on kind of a cliffhanger. And then that slides us into the next series. So this one is State of Affairs, and this is the first family series. So if you're putting your context clues together, like the good language arts teacher and me, something happens to the president, and you know, Nick ends up having to be president because he's vice president. And so he's immediately whisked away, sworn in to office. I'm pretty positive, like, President Nelson's body isn't even, like, cold by the time he is sworn into office. Because, you know, America cannot go without a president. That is why we have a vice president. So they are transitioning power from, like, obviously the Nelsons to the Caponos. Sam is grappling with the fact that, like, now that she is the first lady, she is going to have some level of a Secret Service presence. And she's had 2 agents that have been following her around, like, at this point. But now they're really pushing for more of them because they want her to be safe, yada, yada, yada. So, like, the whole Secret Service fight's happening. Everybody's kind of like, all of her friends are really, like, kind of just like, oh my God, I can't believe that, like, I know the president and the first lady, but, like, they're still just Sam and Nick. And so that's, like, the really big appeal about their relationship. So this one, she has to make compromises. What do you call it? Oh yeah, so she picks up a cold case from about 15 years ago. That ends up adding to the turmoil within the department. So I gave this one 5 stars. Next one in the series is State of Grace, which is the second book. This one is literally like their first holiday at their new home, which is the White House. They host the entire family. It's been a really great transition. There's a tragedy that happens on his watch. This is the first, like, big situation where, like, you know, he's the face of the nation, and, you know, it's really difficult for him because of the topic. I'm not going to go into the topic because it kind of hits, like, a little close to home for me. So if you're interested, like, you know, read the book. So yeah, so they're just kind of transitioning into it. You know, well-liked mother, businesswoman is found in her minivan, and you kind of have to go through the layers of, like, affairs and, you know, marital drama to find out what is and isn't right, or is and isn't accurate. So I gave this one 5 stars. So that's State of Grace. Next up is State of the Union. As you can guess, this is his first State of the Union speech as president. And he writes it himself, dealing with a lot of things that he wants to make sure that he works on in the presidency for however long he's going to be president for. Because he's been very firm in saying that, like, he will, if they want to nominate him, the Democratic Party wants to nominate him. He is absolutely willing to be on the ticket, but, like, he's not leaving to go and campaign because they adopted the twins from books ago and they have a family, and he's not willing to give up the time away from his kids and away from his, like, you know, away from Sam. So if the American people still want him to be president, like, he's in, but he's not going to spend millions and millions of taxpayers' dollars to convince them that he should be the president. Which kind of just makes me like him even more if I didn't already, like, want my own version of him. So this one, so yeah, so he has that, she has a case at work. It's super stressful, as is all of her cases. This one I really enjoyed, but this was more, like, very much more on, like, the home front. Given the fact that, like, this is State of the Union address, it's his first one. There's a little bit of drama concerning the twins that they are fostering, aka adopting. So that's kind of the focus on this one, and I gave this one 5 stars. I promise we're almost done with this series. Sadly, because I'm waiting on the next book to come out. So State of Shock, this one is, let's see. So this one doesn't really give me a whole lot of information. I can't, like I said, State of Shock. So she has another murder, obviously, to contend with. There's a lot of drama given what he said in his State of the Union speech about some really hot topics. They're the hot topics that are in politics right now as well. So I like that we didn't, like, really kind of make up some more of it. And it's really funny, too, that I like this series because, just a plug, I'm not, like, I don't consume a lot of political stuff because I find it to be very depressing sometimes. So I found it very interesting that I was really interested in the series. So I give this book 5 stars. This is book 4 in the First Family series. And this is a lot about Nick dealing with like the ghosts of his past and hoping they don't come to rear their ugly head during his presidency. So this is State of Denial. Sadly, I'm in denial because this is the last published book right now. The next one comes out Christmas or the day after Christmas, and then the following one comes out in April. So I still have some more to look forward to. So Nick's mom and him don't have a really good relationship. And she's arrested for some things that she says in the public eye because like just because the First Amendment gives us the freedom of speech doesn't necessarily mean we should always use it. And how we use it sometimes shouldn't be a thing as well. So she's got a lot going on personally. There is another really, really big situation that happens. Her partner has to take point because Sam's kind of in this, she's overwhelmed. I mean, she's got a lot going on in her life. She just became first lady. She never thought she would be the first lady. I mean, I'm gonna tell you right now, if I ever end up first lady, I'd be like, what? Okay, cool. Yeah, whatever. I'd be like, sure. Another thing to add to the to-do list. So I give this one 5 stars as well. And I really do want to say, like, I don't talk a whole lot about the ensemble cast because, like, really, like, the series itself is about Sam and Nick and, like, the family that they build together and their journey. But if you love, like, ensemble groups and you love seeing, like, the side characters get their happily ever afters and, like, find their happiness, these side characters, that's exactly what happens for them. And we really get to, like, know them, love them. So I definitely highly recommend this series, especially since I just spent like 27 minutes talking about it because it's the first 12 books I read this month. So, next up is The Sinner. Yes, I went from like wholesome family murder suspense to The Sinner by Chantel Tesser. I guess book 5 stars, even though it was close to 600 pages, it was insane. I don't have a lot to say about this because I feel like you just really have to go into this, not necessarily blind, but you want to go into this not knowing too much because you want it to be unveiled to you, I guess is the best way to say it. So 5 stars for this one. It is worth the close to 600 page read, I promise. I really enjoyed it. If you have a trigger, it's probably on this list. So I highly, highly, highly recommend that you check the trigger warnings before you decide to read this book. Next up is going to be Pretty Spiteful by R.A. Smith. So this is a reverse harem. There's going to be 3 guys, I believe, if I'm right about it. I'm only about halfway through the second book. But so this follows a girl who, God, what is her name? Why am I just like spacing? I don't know. No, that's not it. Emelina. I don't know. Emily. Why am I struggling? I say people's names all day. Anyway, so she's a stalker. And she calls her best friend and she's like, hey, I have a problem. Like she freaks out because the boyfriend or whatever that she's with, somebody sends her like a finger of his because, you know, he's probably not alive anymore. And so she ends up calling her best friend. But the problem is like she slept with her best friend's brother and his best friend fell madly in love with him and ran away years before. And they're the ones who are going to be keeping her safe. So this has been a wild ride. Like I said, like I've only read this book. It's a trilogy. All 3 of them are out. They're all like this series is completed. I've had a really good time with it. I just got really distracted by other things you'll see in just a second. So it's not that the second book isn't good. It's just that I allowed myself to become distracted, which, you know, happens. So 5 stars for Pretty Spiteful. I do recommend it. You know, serial killer, RH, possessive, bossy. One of them is a former Marine and is her bodyguard. So there's also like a bodyguard element to this. It's like second chance. It's enemies to lovers. So it has like kind of all the things that like I'm really interested in. So I am really excited to finish it because I'm gonna finish it. The next one is Feathers from the Sea by Jess Wisecup. I gave this one 4 stars, and I did a book club. I do a book club, The Good, the Bad, the Smutty, with Jess. Love to Love Books on Instagram. So I'll link that below because I reread that one. And then we read Hollow by Karina Halley, which I also gave 4 stars. And we have like an hour-long like discussion on them. So if you want my thoughts, feelings, concerns, where I'm at with all of it, I will link it below so you can watch it. Me and my chaotic glory when I try to talk about things live. Not that this wrap up is very succinct either, but I'm having a great time and that's all that matters. And if you're still watching, thanks, because I actually am like getting really excited the further we go. But we're almost done. Next up, I read Shattered Sea by Catherine Cowles. This is actually, what do you call it? A special edition cover that Jess got for me for my birthday. So I love it. Yeah, so I read this one. It's book 4 in the Tattered and Torn series. This follows Laken, who has lived in the town all her life and who is really good friends with our previous heroes and heroines. So that's why we get her story. And there's a Hollywood actor, Bowden Kavanaugh, who comes out to work on Ramsey's ranch. And he's there to like learn how to emulate a horse whisperer for a role he's going to be playing in his next movie. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars just because I wanted the last book in the series and I didn't want to have to wait. So that's pretty much the reason why I feel the way I do about this one. There's nothing wrong with it. It is another wonderful small town romance by Catherine Cowles. It has everything you need, the suspense, the drama. You know, she was in a car accident when she was younger, and all of her friends from when she was younger they're all ending up, what do you call it? Dead. And so she feels like someone's coming after her, and then that whole situation plays out with a gasp at the end. So the next one I listened to this one audio, and it's Fractured Sky, which is the last book in the Torn and Tattered series, and this is the one that I was waiting for. So this is Shiloh and Ramsey's book, and I'm not going to say too much because by the time you get to the 5th book, there's a lot going on, but Shiloh was kidnapped at a very young age. I think she was 10 when she was kidnapped, and she was held for about a week. And our heroine from the first book is the daughter of her kidnapper, and she's the one who actually like wrote into the sheriff's office to say, hey, like my dad's holding this girl, la la la, right? So then fast forward, Shiloh's never really lived, and she's looking to kind of get out into the world. Ramsey's a recluse, so he doesn't really leave his ranch. He doesn't let people on his ranch. He likes his space. He's got a lot of trauma and demons from his past, and he offers for her to come and live on the ranch with him. So it's their romance. It's 5 stars. It was absolutely everything that I wanted from this romance. I love just like how much Ramsey cared for her and how he saw her when everybody else was struggling to see her because they wanted to wrap her up in bubble wrap. And I get it because I couldn't imagine one of my siblings going missing and me not wanting to do the same thing. So I really loved it, and I just like loved their dynamic. And I love how much Ramsey loves her. Like, it is beautiful. And the last book that I read is Reign of a King by Rena Kent, and I gave that book 4 stars. I will not be saying a lot about this because very quickly, as in probably next week, I will be releasing the reading vlog for this one. So if you want my unfiltered 30-ish minutes worth of thoughts on Reign of a King and Rise of a Queen, please feel free to watch that one. But I didn't finish Rise of a Queen until December, so I'll talk about that one next month. Wow, 33 minutes, about to be 34. So that's all the books. Those are the 19 books that I read in the month of November. If you've made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching. I love doing these videos, and even wrap-ups, which sometimes I have to really hype myself up for. I really do truly love doing them. So thank you so much for watching. What was your favorite book of November? Do we have any, like, have we read books that you loved, that I loved? Did you see any books that you think you want to start? I highly recommend starting the Fatal series by Marie Force. As always, thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. All those really fun YouTube-y things. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.